Obi-Wan Kenobi, a bedtime story. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The twin suns of Tatooine hung low in the sky, casting long golden rays across the endless dunes. The desert stretched in every direction, silent, still, and timeless. Among the sands, a lone figure moved carefully, his brown cloak brushing softly against the wind. It was Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi who had once fought in great battles, now living quietly, watching over the boy he had sworn to protect. The air was warm, but not yet heavy with the heat of the day. Obi-Wan's steps were steady, each one a quiet rhythm in the vast emptiness. He paused often, his eyes scanning the horizon, always alert, yet calm, as though he carried stillness with him. The desert was harsh, yet it whispered softly to those who listened. The shifting sands told stories of time, of change, of resilience. And Obi-Wan listened, as though the Force itself spoke through the wind. Not far from where he walked, small creatures stirred, tiny lizards darted across the rocks, and birds called faintly in the distance. Life still clung to this harsh world, quiet but persistent. Obi-Wan watched them with gentle eyes, finding peace in their survival. He adjusted his cloak, pulled the hood slightly lower, and continued on. His presence was quiet, almost like the desert itself, enduring, resilient, but full of hidden strength. As night approached, the twin suns sank below the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of violet and red. Obi-Wan found a place to rest, a small outcrop of stone, shielding him from the wind. He sat in silence, letting the cool night air wash over him. The desert stars began to glow, one by one, until the sky was filled with light. Obi-Wan gazed upward, and for the first time that day, he allowed himself to breathe deeply, to let the galaxy remind him of its beauty. Here, beneath the stars, the Jedi rested, and the desert held him in quiet embrace. The night was calm, the desert air cool against Obi-Wan's face. Above him, the stars shone brighter than any city light, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, mysterious, and alive. He sat cross-legged, his cloak wrapped gently around his shoulders, and closed his eyes. The Force flowed quietly through him, a gentle current, like water moving through stone. It was subtle, but always present, a reminder that even here, on this remote world, he was never truly alone. In his stillness, echoes of the past returned. He heard the voices of old friends, the laughter of Anakin, the wisdom of Master Yoda, the calm words of Qui-Gon Jinn. They drifted like soft winds through his mind, not sharp, not painful, but gentle, memories that carried both weight and comfort. The galaxy had changed, but the Jedi's duty had not. His mission was simple now, to watch, to wait, and to protect the child who carried so much hope. Far across the sands, the night shifted. The wind carried new sounds, the distant calls of Tusken raiders, the quiet scurrying of banthas moving under the moonlight. Obi-Wan's senses sharpened, but he did not rise. He had learned patience. He knew when to act, and when to simply listen. The Force whispered to him, like a lullaby in the silence. It spoke not with words, but with feeling, a reassurance that his path, though lonely, was not meaningless. Obi-Wan breathed deeply, letting the quiet wash through him. The desert was not empty. It was alive, and so was he. Here, in stillness, he found balance. And as the stars continued their endless watch above, he too remained watchful. Dawn came gently over the desert, washing the sands with soft light. The twin suns rose slowly, spreading warmth across the quiet land. Obi-Wan stirred from his rest, pulling back his hood as the morning air shifted. He moved with calm precision, every gesture simple, measured, as though even in solitude, he carried the discipline of a Jedi. The desert around him seemed endless, but Obi-Wan felt its rhythm, its heartbeat. The dunes shifted and changed with the wind, yet the land endured, as he did. By midday, a small figure appeared on the horizon, a lone traveler, leading a tired Eopie through the sands. The man wore rough clothes, a face lined by sun and wind, his steps heavy, yet steady. Obi-Wan watched quietly at first, his hand resting lightly against his cloak. He sensed no danger, only weariness. So he stepped forward, offering a gentle nod. The traveler paused, surprised by the sudden company in the emptiness of the desert. But Obi-Wan's presence was calm, soothing, like shade in the heat. "Long way to be walking alone," the man said softly, his voice carrying the dryness of the dunes. Obi-Wan offered a faint smile. "Sometimes solitude is the best companion," he replied, his tone warm, measured. The two walked together for a short time, the desert stretching endlessly before them. The traveler spoke of simple things, of trading routes, of moisture farms, of storms that swept the land. Obi-Wan listened, offering small words when needed. It was not the deep talk of war or destiny, but something smaller, quieter, a reminder of ordinary life still thriving even in harsh places. When their paths finally split, the traveler bowed his head slightly. "May the suns keep you," he said. "And you," Obi-Wan replied, his voice carrying both kindness and distance. As he watched the man fade into the horizon, Obi-Wan returned to his own path. The desert was vast, but even here, connections could be found, moments of quiet humanity, like stars scattered across the night sky. The day grew warmer, the air heavy with heat as the suns climbed higher. Obi-Wan moved carefully, his cloak wrapped close around him, his steps steady across the dunes. But in the distance, the sky began to shift. Dark clouds of sand rose slowly, rolling like waves across the horizon. The wind carried a low, steady hum, a warning of what was to come. Obi-Wan stopped, his gaze calm, though his senses sharpened. The Force whispered softly to him, and he knew, a storm was approaching. The first winds reached him quickly, grains of sand stinging gently against his cloak. He pulled his hood low, adjusted the cloth around his face, and pressed forward with patient steps. The storm grew stronger, winds howling, sand rising in endless waves around him. The desert vanished into a blur of gold and brown, the world swallowed in movement. Yet Obi-Wan remained calm, his breathing slow, his posture steady, each step taken with purpose. The storm was powerful, but he had endured greater trials. He did not resist the wind, he moved with it, letting the Force guide his balance. At last, he found shelter, a shallow cave carved into the side of a ridge. The stone walls shielded him, though the wind roared outside. Inside the small refuge, he lowered his hood, sand scattering from the folds of his robe. The storm raged, but Obi-Wan sat in silence, his presence calm, his spirit unshaken. He closed his eyes once more, listening not to the chaos of the wind, but to the stillness beneath it. The Force flowed like a river through the storm, reminding him that balance existed everywhere, even in violence, even in noise. The storm would pass, and he would remain. The storm raged through the night, its voice echoing across the desert like thunder. But as the twin suns rose again, the winds began to soften. Slowly, the world stilled. Obi-Wan stepped from the shelter of the ridge, his boots pressing into fresh waves of sand. The desert had changed shape overnight, dunes shifted, valleys erased, as though the land itself had been rewritten. He walked carefully, his eyes moving across the new landscape. The Force nudged at him, gentle, persistent, guiding his steps towards something unseen. Soon, he found it, half buried in the sand, a fragment of metal glimmered in the light. Obi-Wan knelt, brushing the grains away with steady hands. It was a piece of a starship hull, weathered, burned, and broken. Not new, but old, left behind by some forgotten traveler. Nearby, more fragments were scattered, wires tangled like vines, a cracked pilot's helmet, the faint remains of a journey that ended long ago. Obi-Wan stood silently over the wreckage. He felt no threat here, no danger. Only a quiet sadness, a reminder of how easily the galaxy consumed the bold and the reckless. He placed a hand on the sand-covered metal, his eyes closing briefly. In his heart, he offered a prayer through the Force, a wish for peace for those who had fallen, who had left their lives among the dunes. But then, something caught his attention. Beneath one of the twisted panels, half hidden in the sand, lay a small container. Obi-Wan lifted it carefully, dusting the grains from its surface. It was simple, sturdy, and sealed. Inside, he could sense something faint, not dangerous, but alive with history. He tucked it gently beneath his cloak, the desert wind brushing softly against him. Whatever it was, its story was not yet finished, and neither was his. That evening, the desert cooled under the twin moons. Obi-Wan sat near a small fire, its glow soft against the endless night. Before him rested the container, its metal surface worn, its edges marked by time. For hours he had left it untouched, studying its shape, listening to the quiet hum of the Force around it. There was no threat, no darkness, only a sense of age, of memory. At last, he reached forward, his hands steady. With a quiet press, the seal released. The lid opened with a soft hiss, revealing what lay within. Inside, wrapped in old cloth, was a holocron. Its crystal surface glimmered faintly, pulsing with light, as though it had been waiting for someone to find it. Obi-Wan lifted it carefully, his breath slow, his expression calm. He recognized the design, a Jedi holocron, one of many thought lost when the order fell. For a moment, the fire crackled, the desert wind whispered, and the holocron rested in his palm, glowing softly against the night. He activated it with a gentle touch of the Force. The crystal shifted, and light unfolded into the air, forming the flickering image of a Jedi. The figure spoke with calm authority, their voice carrying words from long ago. It was not a message of war, nor a warning, but a lesson, simple teachings of the Force, reminders of patience, balance, and compassion. Obi-Wan listened in silence, his eyes steady, his heart heavy with memory. The voice of another Jedi filled the night, like an echo of a time that had ended. Yet, in this quiet moment, he felt something stir within him, not sorrow, but hope. The wisdom of the Jedi had not been erased. Pieces of it still lived, waiting to be found, waiting to guide. He closed the holocron carefully, placing it back within the container. The fire burned low, and Obi-Wan sat in stillness, the night sky endless above him. The fire had burned down to embers, their glow fading gently into the night. Obi-Wan sat in silence, his cloak drawn close, the holocron resting safely at his side. His eyes drifted upward, to the stars scattered across the dark sky. Each one seemed to whisper of journeys, of worlds far away, of times when the Jedi still walked the galaxy openly. As his mind quieted, sleep came slowly, like a tide washing over him. And in sleep, he dreamed. He stood within a vast forest, the air alive with the scent of leaves and rain. Birds called softly in the distance, and light filtered gently through the trees. And then, from the shadows of the forest path, a figure emerged. Tall, calm, his presence as steady as the earth beneath them. Qui-Gon Jinn, his old master. Obi-Wan felt his heart stir, both heavy and light at once. He had not seen that familiar face in many years, yet here, in the dream, it was as clear as the day they had walked together. Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon said, his voice low, carrying the same warmth it always had. Master, Obi-Wan whispered, his throat tight, his words trembling. Qui-Gon stepped closer, his gaze steady, his presence filled with the calm wisdom that had always guided him. You have carried a heavy burden, he said, but even in exile, you are not alone. The Force is with you, as it has always been. Obi-Wan lowered his head. I have failed, he admitted softly. The Order, Anakin, so much has been lost. Qui-Gon reached out, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. His touch was steady, kind, unshaken. Loss does not define you, he said. Your task is not only to mourn what has ended, but to protect what still remains. Hope is not gone, it lives, in you, and in those yet to come. The forest shimmered, the dream shifting softly like water. Obi-Wan looked into his master's eyes, and for a brief moment, the weight upon him felt lighter. As the dream began to fade, Qui-Gon's voice lingered like a whisper in the leaves. Trust in the Force, Obi-Wan. It will guide you, even through the darkest night. The first light of morning crept across the desert, painting the dunes in soft shades of gold and amber. Obi-Wan stirred, slowly rising from the spot where he had slept, the dream of his master still lingering in his mind. The air was cool and still, the twin suns warming the horizon. He adjusted his cloak and glanced at the holocron, now quiet, its light dimmed but steady. The desert seemed different in this early light, not harsh or empty, but alive, filled with possibilities. Obi-Wan took a deep breath, feeling the Force flow gently through him. The dream had reminded him of patience, of balance, of the quiet strength he carried within. He began to walk again, his steps measured, each one echoing the calm purpose of a Jedi. The sands shifted beneath his boots, but he moved with the rhythm of the land, not against it. As he traveled, he noticed small signs of life, a cluster of desert flowers peeking through the sand, tiny creatures scurrying between rocks, the distant hum of a wind turbine from a far-off moisture farm. Each detail reminded him that even in isolation, the galaxy was alive, and hope endured in small, quiet ways. By mid-morning, Obi-Wan reached the edge of a small settlement. The twin suns cast long shadows on the walls of simple huts, and a few early risers moved slowly along the dusty streets. He observed from a distance, never intruding, just watching. The people here were ordinary, but in their quiet routines, he saw resilience. The Force was alive in them, too, even if they did not know it. Obi-Wan continued along the settlement's edge, his heart steady, his purpose renewed. The dream of Qui-Gon had given him clarity, Though the galaxy was vast, though darkness had spread, he still had a role to play. He would endure, he would protect, and he would carry hope quietly, like a flame in the night. The settlement was small, its streets lined with simple huts and stalls. Most of the residents were just beginning their day, carrying out small chores quietly, their movements careful and measured. Obi-Wan moved among them, blending into the shadows of the walls, his cloak drawn low. He observed quietly, his senses alert to anything that needed attention. He noticed a small child struggling to carry a basket of water, its weight almost too much for him. Without hesitation, Obi-Wan stepped closer, lifting the basket gently with the Force, guiding it toward the child's home. The child looked around in surprise, but saw no one, just the basket moving as if by magic. Obi-Wan smiled beneath his hood, feeling satisfaction in a simple act of kindness. Further along, he saw an elderly woman attempting to repair a broken water pipe. The metal was stiff, and she was struggling under the sun. Obi-Wan approached, carefully nudging the pipe into place with precise Force-assisted movements. The woman stepped back, astonished, but saw no one nearby. The small acts of help went unnoticed by the world, but Obi-Wan felt the quiet warmth of their gratitude, even if unspoken. He continued through the streets, leaving subtle aids wherever they were needed. A lost droid was nudged back onto its path, a toppled cart was righted silently, and a tired animal was guided to shade. The day passed slowly, the twin suns rising higher overhead. Through it all, Obi-Wan remained calm, moving like a ghost of the desert, invisible yet present, a silent guardian. As afternoon turned toward evening, he found a quiet spot at the edge of the settlement. The residents went about their lives, unaware of the Jedi watching over them. Obi-Wan took a deep breath, feeling the Force flow gently, reminding him that even small actions could ripple through the galaxy quietly, bringing light to places touched by shadow. As the suns began to lower, casting long shadows across the settlement, Obi-Wan noticed movement at the edge of the dunes. A small group of sand predators had emerged, drawn by the scent of livestock and water. He did not panic. Instead, he observed calmly, reading their intentions through the Force. Their movements were precise but hungry, searching for an easy target. Obi-Wan stepped lightly across the sand, keeping low and quiet. He extended his hand subtly, using the Force to shift a small rock into their path. The predators hesitated, their attention diverted, giving him a moment to act again. With gentle nudges of the Force, he guided them back toward the open desert, away from the settlement. Not a sound was made, not a cry of alarm. The animals followed the invisible hand, moving safely into the dunes once more. The child's holocron hummed faintly in Obi-Wan's bag, a reminder of the balance he maintained. He watched the predators disappear over the horizon, their shadows swallowed by the fading light. He then returned to the settlement, checking quietly on the animals and the people. All were safe, unaware of the small danger that had passed them by. Obi-Wan paused, breathing in the calm desert air. Even in the presence of threat, he had remained patient and steady. The Force had guided him, just as it always would. As night fell, he found a high dune to rest upon. The twin moons rose slowly, casting silver light across the sand. Obi-Wan settled down, pulling his cloak close, and let the serenity of the desert wash over him. The galaxy was vast, the challenges many, but even here, he could find quiet strength and peace. The twin moons of Tatooine rose slowly, casting gentle silver light across the desert dunes. Obi-Wan sat atop a high ridge, his cloak wrapped snugly around him, the night quiet, save for the whispering wind. He gazed at the moons, their calm presence reflecting in his helmeted eyes. Each light seemed to carry memories, echoes of the past and the lessons of the Jedi. He thought of the ancient temples, the quiet halls filled with knowledge, and the gentle wisdom of Master Yoda. The teachings had shaped him, guiding him through war, exile, and now, the solitude of the desert. The Force hummed softly through the night, like a quiet river beneath the sands. Obi-Wan let it fill him, reminding him that balance was always possible, even in the harshest of places. Small creatures stirred in the dunes below, their soft movements a gentle rhythm in the stillness. Obi-Wan watched them with calm appreciation. The galaxy was full of life, even here, even when hidden beneath layers of sand and silence. He closed his eyes briefly, allowing the lessons of patience, compassion, and vigilance to settle within him. Every challenge he faced, every moment of loneliness, was part of a greater path. As the night deepened, the twin moons reflected on the sands like silver rivers. Obi-Wan remained on the ridge, listening to the desert, feeling the Force flow around him. Even in silence, he knew he was not truly alone. The Force, the wisdom of his masters, and the hope for the future, all traveled with him. And under the quiet light of the moons, Obi-Wan felt a small but steadfast sense of peace. The night was calm, the twin moons casting soft silver light over the desert. Obi-Wan's eyes scanned the horizon, his senses alert even in the quiet. Far in the distance, he noticed a small figure moving slowly across the dunes. The travelers seemed weary, their steps careful, but they were heading toward the settlement. Obi-Wan remained still, observing through the shadows. He could sense no threat, only curiosity, and perhaps a bit of fear in the stranger. He decided to approach quietly. Each step was measured, careful not to startle the traveler. As he drew closer, he raised a hand in a calm greeting, his presence steady and non-threatening. The figure paused, surprised by the sudden calm in the desert night. Obi-Wan's voice was soft, yet carried the calm authority of a Jedi. "Peace. You are safe here." The traveler relaxed slightly, lowering their head in respect. I am lost," they said quietly. "The desert is vast, and I fear I will not find shelter." Obi-Wan nodded, understanding the fear of being alone in the harsh wilderness. "You will not be alone," he replied gently. "Follow me, there is a place to rest, and you will be safe through the night." Together, they moved through the soft sands, Obi-Wan guiding the traveler with subtle movements of the Force, helping them keep balance on the shifting dunes. The twin moons reflected on the sand, lighting their path as if the desert itself had softened for them. By the time they reached the settlement, the travelers' fear had ebbed, replaced by quiet relief. Obi-Wan ensured they were safely sheltered, and then he withdrew into the shadows, watching silently, a guardian unnoticed. The desert returned to calm, the night still, and Obi-Wan settled atop a dune once more. The Force whispered softly, reminding him that even small acts of guidance could ripple through the galaxy, bringing light into the darkest places. The settlement was peaceful, the traveler resting safely inside a small hut. Obi-Wan remained atop his dune, watching silently under the twin moons. The desert night was calm, the air cool and still. Every sound, the rustle of sand, the distant calls of small desert creatures, was amplified in the quiet. Obi-Wan closed his eyes, letting the Force flow gently around him. He thought of the traveler, of the people in the settlement, and of the galaxy beyond these dunes. Even in the solitude of exile, even with the weight of the past, hope still existed. It was quiet, like a small ember in the night, yet strong enough to guide those who trusted it. He remembered the lessons of his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, the words that had echoed through his mind in dreams. Trust in the Force. It will guide you. Obi-Wan felt the truth of those words now, here, beneath the vast desert sky. The twin moons reflected on the sand, silver light touching every ridge and valley. The desert, though harsh, was alive with potential. Even the smallest life could endure, and even the quietest acts of kindness could ripple outward, unseen but powerful. Obi-Wan stood slowly, his cloak flowing with the gentle desert wind. He looked to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn would soon arrive. The galaxy was vast, and the future uncertain, but he had purpose. With the traveler safe and hope quietly alive, he felt renewed determination. No matter the trials to come, he would continue to walk his path, a guardian, a guide, and a silent protector of those who could not protect themselves. The night passed, and Obi-Wan remained calm, ready for the dawn, ready for whatever the desert, and the galaxy, would bring next. The first light of dawn painted the desert in soft shades of gold and amber. Obi-Wan rose from his dune, his cloak brushing gently against the warm sand. The twin suns slowly climbed the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet settlement below. He took a deep breath, feeling the Force flow steadily through him. The desert was alive, its rhythm gentle and unbroken. Every grain of sand seemed to whisper of patience, every breeze spoke of balance. Obi-Wan began his descent toward the settlement, moving quietly among the huts and small streets. The traveler he had helped the previous night stirred, looking out a small window with curiosity. Obi-Wan gave a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement of safety and trust. The villagers moved about their morning chores, watering plants, tending animals, and preparing for the day ahead. Obi-Wan observed silently, intervening only when a small act of guidance was needed. A cart had become stuck in the sand, and he shifted it lightly with the Force, allowing the villagers to continue without worry. A water container teetered on the edge of a table, and he steadied it without anyone noticing. These small acts went unseen, but they mattered. Obi-Wan knew that protection was not always about battles fought or enemies defeated. Sometimes, it was about quiet guidance, keeping balance, and letting hope flourish unnoticed. By midday, the settlement thrived under his quiet watch. The twin suns were high in the sky, but the villagers moved with calm energy, their lives untouched by the dangers that roamed the dunes. Obi-Wan stepped back to the edge of the settlement, taking a moment to observe the wider desert. The journey ahead was uncertain, but he was ready. With each small act of care, he kept the Force alive in this quiet corner of the galaxy. The day stretched onward, and Obi-Wan remained a silent guardian, walking gently among the sands, watching over those who could not see him, and finding peace in the quiet rhythm of life. The afternoon sun blazed over the desert, its warmth rippling through the sands. Obi-Wan paused atop a small dune, closing his eyes briefly to feel the Force flow around him. Even in calm, there were whispers of unrest. He sensed it faintly at first, a shift in the currents, a disturbance far across the dunes. The Force guided him silently, alerting him to movement that had yet to reach the settlement. Through the hum of the desert, he could feel the approach of something unknown. Not immediate danger, but a presence that could bring trouble if left unchecked. Obi-Wan adjusted his stance, his cloak flowing lightly in the wind. He did not rush. The Force taught patience, and he knew that calm observation often prevented more harm than action alone. From a distance, he saw figures moving slowly along the dunes. Their approach was cautious, but intent. Obi-Wan observed their path, letting the Force guide his understanding of their purpose. With gentle movements, he positioned himself closer to the settlement, yet hidden from view. He would protect, but not confront unnecessarily. Balance was key. As the figures drew nearer, Obi-Wan subtly influenced the sands. Small shifts of wind, minor tremors beneath the dunes, guided the travelers away from the villagers' paths. They stumbled slightly, redirected without noticing the invisible hand guiding them. The danger passed silently, the desert reclaiming its quiet rhythm. Obi-Wan remained calm, sensing relief ripple through the Force as the thread drifted harmlessly away. He returned to the settlement's edge, the villagers still unaware of the peril that had passed. Obi-Wan knelt briefly, placing a hand on the warm sand. The desert hummed beneath him, and he felt the Force restore balance once more. Even in the vastness of Tatooine, even amid unseen dangers, he carried serenity. He was a guardian, silent and steadfast, and the desert trusted him as much as he trusted it. The desert sun began to lower, casting long golden shadows across the dunes. Obi-Wan moved quietly through the shifting sands, guided by the subtle hum of the Force. Ahead, he sensed something unusual, a small disturbance in the rhythm of the land. Following it, he discovered a hidden oasis, its waters shimmering softly, surrounded by clusters of green foliage. The air was cooler here, and the sound of water trickling over rocks brought a rare calm. Obi-Wan knelt at the edge of the pool, letting the Force flow through him, feeling the life that thrived quietly in this secret place. A small group of desert creatures drank from the water, unaware of the Jedi watching nearby. Even in this harsh world, life found a way, and Obi-Wan felt a profound sense of connection. He closed his eyes, listening to the gentle whispers of the leaves, the soft ripples of water, and the hum of the Force moving around him. Here, there was no need for vigilance, no need for careful steps or subtle influence. The oasis existed as a sanctuary, a reminder that even in the harshest environments, peace could be found. Obi-Wan sat in quiet reflection, thinking of the Jedi teachings, the lessons of patience and balance. The oasis was a symbol of hope, that even small refuges could survive, and even small acts of care could nurture life. As the twin moons rose slowly over the desert, their silver light reflected on the water. Obi-Wan remained still, letting the serenity wash over him, knowing that tomorrow, he would continue his watch, but tonight, he would rest in quiet peace. Night fell softly over the hidden oasis, the twin moons reflecting on the calm waters. Obi-Wan had made a small camp nearby, his cloak wrapped around him as he settled to rest. The desert was quiet, the only sounds the gentle ripple of the pool and the whispering of leaves in the breeze. As he drifted toward sleep, his mind carried him far from Tatooine, to the temples of the Jedi, to the friends and mentors who had guided him long ago. In his dream, the halls of the Jedi Temple stretched endlessly, light spilling through tall windows, illuminating the polished floors. He saw Qui-Gon Jinn, his old master, calm and serene. "Obi-Wan," the voice echoed softly, "remember that the Force is alive in all things. Even in the smallest oasis, even in the quietest moments, hope persists." Anakin appeared as well, younger, untroubled, laughing softly as he moved across the halls. The memory brought a bittersweet warmth to Obi-Wan's heart. Though the galaxy had changed, the lessons remained, the importance of patience, of vigilance, and of hope. The dream shifted, and Obi-Wan walked through a serene forest, the air filled with soft light and quiet life. Every step was deliberate, every movement calm. The Force flowed around him, embracing him, reminding him that even in solitude, he was never truly alone. When he finally awoke, the twin moons still glimmered above the oasis. The desert was peaceful, and the Force hummed gently through the air. Obi-Wan rose slowly, feeling renewed, ready to continue his watch, carrying the lessons of his dreams into the coming day. The first light of dawn touched the desert sands, casting soft amber and gold across the horizon. Obi-Wan rose from his quiet camp at the oasis, stretching lightly, and began his journey back toward the settlement he had been watching. The desert was calm, its rhythm steady under the rising suns. But as he walked, he sensed movement in the distance, far across the dunes. Using the Force, Obi-Wan focused, narrowing his perception to the faint ripples in the desert energy. A small group of travelers approached, their path deliberate but cautious. They were not hostile, but the Force whispered that their intentions were unknown. Obi-Wan remained hidden for a moment, observing. He noted the way they moved, how they scanned the horizon, and how one carried a small bundle, as if guarding something precious. Deciding to meet them carefully, he stepped from behind a dune, raising a calm hand in greeting. "Peace," he said softly. "You are approaching a settlement. You are safe, if you follow my guidance." The travelers paused, uncertain at first, then slowly relaxed as they felt his presence. Obi-Wan's calm, steady demeanor reassured them, his years of patience evident in every motion. He guided them across the dunes, avoiding unstable patches of sand, and subtly using the Force to ease their path. The twin suns reflected on the travelers' faces, showing relief and quiet gratitude. As they neared the settlement, Obi-Wan ensured they were unseen by others, so that their arrival would not cause alarm. The desert stretched silent around them, a vast canvas for quiet, unseen guidance. Once the travelers were safely within the settlement, Obi-Wan retreated to a nearby ridge. He gazed across the dunes, feeling the Force flow smoothly through him. Even in the vast, harsh desert, balance could be maintained, and hope quietly preserved. The sun had climbed higher over the desert, casting its warmth across the dunes. Obi-Wan remained atop a ridge, observing the settlement below, and the travelers who now moved quietly among the villagers. The Force hummed gently around him, a reminder of the delicate balance he maintained. Each life, no matter how small, was a thread in the vast tapestry of the galaxy. He thought about the traveler's journey, how easily the harsh desert could overwhelm those unprepared. Yet with careful guidance and patience, even the most uncertain path could be navigated safely. Obi-Wan reflected on his own path, the years of solitude and vigilance. Though he had lost much, the lessons of the Jedi and the quiet guidance of the Force kept him grounded, and gave him purpose. Small signs of life in the dunes caught his attention, a lizard darting across a sunlit rock, the distant cry of a bird, the sway of desert plants in the gentle wind. Even here, in this remote corner of Tatooine, life persisted. And so did hope. Obi-Wan understood that his duty was not only to guard, but also to observe, to guide, and to protect without being seen. This silent vigilance was a form of strength, as necessary as any battle. As the day advanced, he adjusted his cloak against the desert heat, then descended carefully toward the settlement's edge. His presence remained quiet, unnoticed by those around him, yet in every subtle action, every careful step, he upheld the balance of this small corner of the galaxy. Obi-Wan paused briefly on a small dune, glancing at the horizon where the twin suns reflected gold on the sands. The desert stretched endlessly, yet he felt no loneliness. The Force was alive in every grain of sand, every creature, and every person he protected. And in that truth, he found quiet peace and renewed purpose. The twin suns of Tatooine were high in the sky, casting sharp light and deep shadows across the endless dunes. Obi-Wan paused atop a ridge, feeling the gentle hum of the Force flowing through him. Even in the vastness of the desert, the Force spoke softly, carrying whispers of distant events, echoes of the galaxy far beyond Tatooine. At first, the whisper was faint, like the soft rustle of sand in the wind. Obi-Wan focused, closing his eyes briefly, tuning into the currents of the Force. There, faint but persistent, was a signal, subtle, urgent, but not threatening. He sensed a presence far across the desert, or perhaps beyond it, someone or something in need of guidance, a ripple in the fabric of the galaxy. Obi-Wan allowed himself to follow the whisper, not in haste, but with measured steps, letting the Force guide his attention. The desert around him seemed to respond, the sand shifting lightly under his boots, and a gentle wind brushing against his cloak. He felt a sense of connection, a reminder that even in solitude, he was part of a larger story, and that his vigilance mattered. The whisper faded slowly, leaving only the calm hum of the Force in its place. Obi-Wan opened his eyes, gazing across the horizon, a small smile touching his lips. The galaxy moved, unseen, and he would be ready when his guidance was needed. He adjusted his cloak, feeling renewed determination. Though the desert stretched endlessly before him, he understood that patience, observation, and quiet vigilance were his greatest tools. Obi-Wan began walking toward the settlement once more, the twin suns reflecting gold on the dunes. The Force flowed steadily, its whispering guidance a reminder that even small actions could influence the future, and even a lone Jedi could preserve hope. The sun hung low over the desert, casting long, warm shadows across the dunes. Obi-Wan returned to the settlement, moving quietly among the huts, his presence calm and unobtrusive. He noticed the traveler he had guided days before, preparing for a longer journey through the harsh sands. The small bundle they carried was heavy, and their movements careful but unsteady. Obi-Wan approached subtly, making his presence known only when necessary. "Let me assist you," he said softly. The traveler looked up, surprised, but relaxed at the calm authority in his voice. With subtle guidance, he adjusted their pack, shifted the weight of supplies, and demonstrated a few careful steps across the uneven sand. Each action was quiet, precise, a lesson in patience and efficiency. The traveler nodded, absorbing his instructions with care. Obi-Wan reminded them gently. "Move with the rhythm of the desert, not against it. The sands are unforgiving, but the Force can guide your steps." Together, they prepared the small mount and water supply, ensuring everything was secure. Obi-Wan even used the Force to stabilize the load, making the journey less tiring for the traveler. By the time preparations were complete, the twin moons began their slow rise in the sky, casting silver light over the settlement. The traveler looked ready, hope shining quietly in their eyes. Obi-Wan stepped back, watching silently as they departed, moving carefully across the dunes. Though unseen by others, he knew his guidance would ripple forward, keeping them safe through the harsh desert night. As he returned to his perch atop a dune, the desert wind brushed softly across his cloak. Obi-Wan allowed himself a moment of reflection. Even in solitude, even with the galaxy's weight on his shoulders, small acts of care and patience could make a difference. Had grown heavy, the twin suns now lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the dunes. Obi-Wan sat atop a ridge, his cloak drawn tight against the warm wind. He sensed a subtle shift in the Force, a disturbance moving across the sand. At first, it was faint, but as he focused, the pattern became clear. A desert storm was forming, its power traveling steadily toward the settlement. Obi-Wan stood, observing the horizon carefully. The storm would arrive in hours, its winds capable of sweeping away unprotected structures and endangering the residents. He did not panic. The Force flowed steadily through him, and he allowed it to guide his decisions. Preparation and patience would be key. He moved quickly, though quietly, checking the edges of the settlement. Loose items were secured, small fires extinguished, animals guided to safer areas. Obi-Wan's movements were precise, each action deliberate and efficient, ensuring that the villagers would remain safe without knowing why. As the first gusts of wind arrived, he climbed to a higher dune, watching the storm grow in strength. Sand whipped violently around him, but he remained calm, anchored by the Force. From this vantage point, he guided the storm's path subtly, nudging loose dunes away from the settlement, softening its impact where he could. The twin moons began to rise, casting silver light through the swirling sand. Obi-Wan stayed vigilant, watching over the settlement and the dunes beyond. Though the desert raged, he was a steady presence, ensuring that life below remained unharmed. In the vastness of Tatooine, even a single Jedi could bring quiet balance, protecting hope against the harsh winds of the galaxy. The desert lay calm after the storm, its sand smooth and glistening under the twin suns. Obi-Wan sat in meditation on a high ridge, his cloak wrapped around him, eyes closed, listening to the subtle hum of the Force. At first, all was quiet, but then, a ripple, a faint disturbance flowed through the current of the Force, distant yet undeniable. It was not like the storm, nor the quiet struggles of the villagers. This was sharper, a presence moving across the desert with intent. Obi-Wan opened his eyes slowly, gazing out toward the horizon. Though nothing could yet be seen, he felt it, a shadow, a thread of danger woven into the fabric of Tatooine. He rose, adjusting his cloak, and began walking along the ridge. Every step was careful, guided by instinct and patience. Though his exile demanded he remain hidden, he knew that some threats could not be ignored. A small caravan appeared in the distance, its banners unfamiliar. Obi-Wan focused, sensing unease among the travelers. They carried something of importance, though even they did not seem to know its weight. The ripple in the Force grew stronger, surrounding the caravan like a storm waiting to break. It was not the object alone, but what might follow it. Obi-Wan exhaled slowly. He would not act yet. For now, he would watch, listen, and allow the Force to reveal the truth in time. From his high vantage point, the desert stretched endlessly, its silence broken only by the whisper of the wind. And within that silence, Obi-Wan felt the first hint of trials yet to come. The desert sun dipped lower, casting long golden streaks across the dunes. From his vantage point, Obi-Wan watched the caravan wind slowly across the sands. Its pace was steady, but he could sense unease among the travelers. They carried crates and bundles, their mounts weighed down, yet it was not the supplies that drew Obi-Wan's attention. It was the ripple in the Force, subtle, but persistent, growing stronger the closer he focused. Moving quietly along the ridge, he matched the caravan's path from a distance. Every step was silent, his cloak blending with the shifting dunes. The travelers never noticed him, yet he observed every detail, their guarded movements, their constant glances toward the horizon. At nightfall, the caravan stopped to make camp. Fires flickered softly, casting shadows across the sand. From the darkness, Obi-Wan sensed tension, not just from the travelers, but from something beyond the dunes. He extended his awareness, the Force flowing through him like a steady current. There it was, a faint presence, watching, waiting. Obi-Wan's hand brushed his lightsaber hilt, though he did not ignite it. Revealing himself now would draw too much attention. Instead, he remained still, a silent guardian in the night, listening for the truth hidden in the shifting sands. The desert wind carried a sound, distant, sharp, like metal against stone. The shadow that followed the caravan was closer than they realized. Obi-Wan narrowed his gaze. Whatever lay ahead, the Force had guided him here for a reason. And when the moment came, he would be ready. The desert was quiet, almost eerily so. Obi-Wan walked slowly along the ridge, the twin suns casting long shadows across the sand. From his meditation, he felt the Force ripple strangely, like a pebble dropped in a calm pond. It came from the caravan he had been watching. Something was moving in the dunes, a presence he had not sensed before. He crouched low, blending with the sand, watching carefully. Two figures emerged from the shadows, moving with caution but clear intent. Obi-Wan could feel the disturbance in the Force. They were not ordinary travelers. Every instinct told him to act carefully. He did not want a confrontation, but he could not ignore this threat. The Force whispered guidance, showing him the path to intercept them without being seen. He moved silently, footsteps barely touching the sand. From the ridge, he could see the caravan below, their mounts grazing peacefully, unaware of the approaching danger. Obi-Wan's hand hovered near his lightsaber, though he did not ignite it. Patience was as powerful as any weapon. The two shadowy figures crept closer, and Obi-Wan subtly used the Force to shift the sand beneath their feet, causing them to stumble slightly, unseen by the caravan. He watched their reactions carefully. They paused, then continued forward, unaware that a Jedi guided their path. Obi-Wan knew he had a choice: intervene directly or continue guiding them subtly. The desert, the caravan, the Force itself, all called for quiet balance. He decided to remain hidden, letting the shadowed figures wander past harmlessly. The ripple in the Force softened, the disturbance fading. Obi-Wan exhaled slowly, feeling the calm return to the desert. Even in a vast, empty world, he realized again that vigilance and patience could prevent danger without ever being seen. The desert sun hung low, painting the dunes in deep gold. Obi-Wan moved silently along the ridge, his eyes fixed on the caravan below. The travelers seemed ordinary at first glance, but the Force whispered otherwise. Something important was hidden among them. He descended carefully, keeping to the shadows. Every step was deliberate, each movement blending with the sand. From this vantage point, he could see crates marked with strange symbols, unfamiliar markings that hinted at purpose beyond simple trade. Obi-Wan crouched behind a dune, listening. The travelers spoke in hushed tones, unaware of his presence. He could sense their concern, their cautious glances toward the horizon. It was not fear of the desert, but of something else. An unseen weight pressing on them. He considered intervening, but patience had always been his ally. Instead, he allowed the Force to guide him, watching, waiting, understanding the truth before acting. As the caravan set up camp for the night, Obi-Wan approached subtly, guiding his steps so the sand shifted softly beneath him, unseen. He peered at the crates, feeling the Force ripple around them. Inside, he sensed a small, fragile object, valuable, powerful, and dangerous if misused. The night grew deeper, and Obi-Wan remained vigilant. He did not need to confront the travelers yet. For now, his task was observation, ensuring the balance of the desert remained intact. The caravan slept under the twin moons, while Obi-Wan, the silent guardian, kept watch. The twin moons of Tatooine hung low over the desert, casting silver light across the dunes. Obi-Wan sat quietly atop a ridge, his cloak blending with the shadows, eyes scanning the caravan below. The night was calm, but the Force whispered subtle warnings. Something about the caravan's cargo disturbed the balance, though the travelers remained unaware. Patience was his ally, and he did not move hastily. A soft wind swept across the sands, carrying distant sounds of desert creatures. Obi-Wan's senses extended through the Force, feeling the flow of energy from every grain of sand, every living being nearby. He noticed a small figure moving outside the main camp, stepping cautiously between the dunes. It was not one of the caravan travelers. The ripple in the Force told him it was curious, perhaps lost, perhaps seeking guidance. Obi-Wan descended carefully, his movements quiet and deliberate. He kept himself hidden, using the Force to guide the small figure toward safety. The desert was unforgiving, but with careful attention, even the most fragile life could be protected. Returning to his vantage point, he observed the caravan once more. The object they carried hummed faintly in the Force, like a heartbeat echoing across the sands. Obi-Wan understood its significance. It was not just cargo, but a responsibility, a potential seed of danger or hope. The desert night continued its rhythm, and Obi-Wan remained the silent guardian, ensuring that balance was preserved, even when no one else could see him. The first light of dawn crept slowly across the desert, turning the sand into waves of gold and amber. Obi-Wan rose from his watch atop the ridge, his cloak brushing softly against the dunes. The caravan had prepared to move, their packs secured and mounts ready. Obi-Wan observed quietly, knowing the travelers were unaware of the unseen guidance that had kept them safe. He took a deep breath, feeling the Force flow steadily around him. The disturbance from the night before had passed, and balance returned to the desert. Every grain of sand, every creature stirring in the dawn, was a reminder of the delicate harmony he was sworn to protect. Obi-Wan descended to the edge of the caravan's path, his steps measured and silent. He could sense their hope, their uncertainty, and the weight of responsibility carried in their cargo. Though he did not approach directly, his presence guided them subtly, ensuring they would continue safely on their journey. As the twin suns climbed higher, casting warm light over the dunes, Obi-Wan paused for a moment of reflection. The desert was harsh, unyielding, and vast, but within it, life persisted, and hope endured. He turned back toward his small hidden shelter, ready to continue his watch. The day had begun, and with it, the quiet vigilance of a Jedi in exile. Even alone, even unseen, he remained the guardian of the desert, a silent protector of peace and balance. The desert sun was high but gentle now, casting warm light across the dunes. Obi-Wan walked slowly along a ridge, taking in the vastness of the desert and the quiet life within it. Though he was alone, he felt the Force flowing through every grain of sand, through every small creature stirring beneath the rocks, reminding him that even the smallest presence mattered. He paused at the edge of a small oasis, its water shimmering in the sunlight. Here, life persisted against the harsh desert, plants reaching toward the sky, small animals drinking cautiously, and the wind carrying distant whispers through the leaves. Obi-Wan knelt briefly, letting the Force guide his reflection. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but even small actions, helping travelers, guiding a caravan, protecting life, could ripple outward in ways unseen. He continued along the dunes, his cloak brushing against the sand. The Force whispered soft lessons in patience, vigilance, and balance, reminding him that the duty of a Jedi was not always heroic battles or loud victories. Sometimes it was silence, watching over life, and acting only when truly necessary. As the sun moved higher, Obi-Wan found a quiet spot to rest, listening to the subtle rhythms of the desert. The distant hum of the wind, the soft splash of water at the oasis, the gentle shift of sand under unseen creatures' feet, all were part of a living tapestry. And in that quiet, he felt peace, knowing that even in exile, even alone, he could make a difference. The twin moons had fully risen, casting silver light over the dunes. Obi-Wan moved slowly along a high ridge, his cloak flowing with the gentle wind. The desert was alive in quiet ways. Every grain of sand, every distant creature, every rustle of wind whispered secrets if one only listened. He paused, closing his eyes, letting the Force flow through him. It spoke of balance, of patience, of vigilance. Even when unseen, a Jedi's presence could influence the world, protecting life and hope in subtle, almost invisible ways. The caravan he had been watching earlier had long disappeared into the distance. Yet Obi-Wan felt the lingering ripple in the Force, like echoes left behind by their passage. Somewhere ahead, the desert would challenge them, harsh winds, treacherous dunes, and hidden dangers. But he knew that his quiet guidance had given them a head start. Obi-Wan descended carefully toward a small oasis tucked between dunes. Here, water shimmered under the moons, and the desert life thrived despite the harshness of the environment. A group of small creatures scurried nearby, and Obi-Wan watched them with gentle awareness. He knelt by the water, letting his reflection ripple across the surface. The Force was strong here, even in isolation. It reminded him of the galaxy beyond Tatooine, of war, of loss, of hope, and of the endless duty of a Jedi. Even in exile, even alone, he could make a difference. Rising, he continued along the dunes, his eyes scanning the horizon, listening to the faint movements of the desert, feeling the subtle shifts of energy in every grain of sand. A sudden gust of wind stirred the dunes, and Obi-Wan paused, sensing something moving ahead. A traveler appeared, small and hesitant, struggling through the sand. Obi-Wan stepped lightly, guiding them subtly with the Force, ensuring they moved safely toward a more stable path. The traveler never noticed him, but his presence had changed their fate. By the time he returned to his perch atop a ridge, the night had deepened, and the desert was quiet again. Obi-Wan allowed himself a moment of calm, feeling the steady pulse of the Force surrounding him. Even in solitude, even in the vast emptiness of the desert, he was not powerless. The galaxy's balance could be preserved through patience, observation, and quiet action. The desert stretched endlessly under the silver light of the twin moons. Obi-Wan walked slowly along a ridge, his cloak blending with the shifting shadows. The night was calm, but the Force whispered softly, reminding him that even in apparent stillness, danger could stir. He paused, feeling the faint ripple of movement far across the dunes. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet persistent. A traveler, perhaps lost, or maybe someone following a path of uncertainty, moved through the desert unaware of the challenges ahead. Obi-Wan descended carefully, his steps silent against the sand. The dunes shifted gently beneath him, and he let the Force guide his movements. Each step was deliberate, calculated, and invisible to the world around him. He was a shadow in the desert, an unseen guardian ensuring safety. He came upon a small oasis, its water reflecting the pale light of the moons. Creatures of the night drank cautiously, their movements quick and delicate. Obi-Wan crouched nearby, observing quietly, feeling the pulse of life around him. Even the smallest presence mattered, he realized, and every action, however subtle, could tip the balance. The traveler appeared again, struggling over a ridge, weary and unsure, guided only by instinct and faint hope. Obi-Wan extended his awareness through the Force, nudging them gently toward a safer path, shielding them from hidden dangers lurking among the dunes. He watched as the figure moved steadily onward, never knowing of the Jedi guiding them, never aware that their survival had been influenced by an unseen hand. A quiet satisfaction filled him, knowing he had acted without recognition, as a Jedi should. Returning to his vantage point atop the ridge, Obi-Wan allowed himself a slow, deep breath. The desert was alive with soft whispers, and he let the Force flow around him, steady and calming. The caravan was safe, the traveler was on the right path, and the desert continued its endless rhythm. Even in exile, even alone, Obi-Wan understood that vigilance, patience, and subtle guidance were powerful tools. The galaxy might be far away, but here, in this quiet desert, he preserved balance. As the night deepened further, he sank briefly to rest atop the sand, allowing the calm and quiet of Tatooine to surround him. Every ripple of the wind, every shift of the dunes, reminded him that life persisted, and that hope could endure in even the harshest places. The first light of dawn crept over the desert, painting the dunes in soft amber and gold. Obi-Wan walked steadily across a ridge, his cloak trailing gently behind him. The desert was alive with quiet movement, sand shifting beneath small creatures, the wind whispering softly across the dunes. Though the night had been calm, the Force hinted at something ahead. A distant ripple, almost like a soft pulse, stirred across the sands and caught Obi-Wan's attention. It was subtle, easy to miss, but he could feel it. Life moving with intent somewhere beyond the horizon. He paused, closing his eyes, letting the Force guide him. Even in exile, even alone, he could sense disturbances, small events that could become large if left unchecked. Patience was his ally, and he allowed the desert to reveal its secrets. Moving cautiously down the ridge, he spotted a lone figure far below, struggling against the uneven dunes. It was a traveler, weary and unsure, carrying a small bundle that seemed heavier than it should be. Obi-Wan could sense its importance in the Force, though he could not yet discern its exact nature. He approached silently, guided by intuition and the subtle currents of the desert. Every step was measured, every movement quiet. The traveler stumbled, and Obi-Wan used the Force to shift a small rock, creating a stable path without them noticing. It was a small action, but it ensured the traveler's safety, and that ripple of protection spread outward, unseen. Obi-Wan crouched nearby, observing as the traveler paused, resting in the early morning light. He could feel their thoughts, hope, fatigue, uncertainty. The desert was unforgiving, yet here, life endured. Patience, vigilance, and quiet guidance were the tools of a Jedi, and he wielded them without recognition, without glory. As the suns rose higher, painting the desert in brilliant light, Obi-Wan felt the first subtle shift in the Force. The ripple that had caught his attention was settling, the traveler now safely continuing on their path. The desert remained calm, its quiet rhythm a reminder that balance could be preserved through careful observation and gentle action. He turned back toward his hidden shelter, walking slowly over the dunes, each step deliberate and mindful. Even alone, even unseen, he was a guardian of life and hope, watching over Tatooine in silence, and preparing for the trials yet to come.